Hello and welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 27. My name's Annaschmidt and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. Seriously, no one else talks about these beings the way that I do. And today we're talking hatmen, cloaked figures, and that ominous presence that we sometimes feel standing over us in bed. Now, are these three types of energy beings paranormal? Today we're going to find out. To some people, that is exactly how they see them. Because as humans, we just want to dump everything of a spooky nature into the paranormal field, especially if we don't understand it. I tend to think of these beings as universal observers, as energy beings from other dimensions or realities, who either intentionally or unintentionally find themselves in our Earth reality. And I often wonder if they are viewing or monitoring our behaviours, actions and reactions, like some sort of cosmic assessment team, looking at whether we're ready to level up to our next mass energetic evolution or to stay exactly as we are. Now, people often fear these beings simply because they don't understand them and because people love drama. I could talk about this all the time. People love paranormal drama, and what is more dramatic than unknown entities roaming around your house perceived to be causing mischief? I prefer to take a different approach. I like to calmly and respectfully observe them as much as they're observing me, and I wait to see what happens. Because quite often, when you respect these beings, they will share information with you. They will talk to you. They will advance your skills because they can see that you are interested in them in a genuine way. Now, I have two experiences with these strange beings to share with you today. One of which I will call a hatman experience because this is simply how the energy being was described to me by a teenager whose parents called me to advise about a house clearing. And another experience with what I think was a remote viewer in this Earth reality, but it could have just as easily been an energy being reviewing me, watching me, looking at me, observing me from another interdimensional place. Kind of exciting to think about, really. But more on that case later in this episode. Now, this first experience I have called the Midnight Visitor. A family had moved into a new home, and in one of the 3 bedrooms, 2 sisters shared bunk beds. Now, while asleep on the bottom bunk, the oldest sister would sometimes wake to see the shape of a man in their bedroom doorway, who appeared to be wearing a hat. She said it looked like a tall person dressed in black with a very defined outline. Like she could see this person in pitch black darkness. There was a slightly different denseness to the darkness, if that makes any sense. Now, this was not her father, as he would be fast asleep at midnight, and he didn't wear the 1950s style trilby hat that she saw on this energy being's head. Now, this was someone or something else who stood silently at the door, attempting to blend into the darkness. Now, she did say that this being wasn't menacing, nor did it move towards her, but preferred to stand silently observing and watching. And yes, this totally creeped her out. This was a local Tasmanian home, yet again. Lots of things happen here in Tasmania, and I'm so glad I can share them with you. This family was located here in Hobart, and they'd become really good friends of mine over the years. So while visiting one afternoon, the oldest daughter plucked up the courage to tell of this midnight visitor she had been seeing. Now, Nancy, the mum, gave me permission to do what I call a walk around the home. This is where I walk past or I'll enter rooms and I just let my body do the sensing. I let it do its dowsing thing and see what my other psychic senses can pick up as well. Now, as I walked past the sister's bedroom, I stopped and I backtracked. I stood in the doorway as I kind of sensed the energy of an open portal. Now, you're going to ask me, how do I know that? Because I've just come from the kitchen, the lounge room, which felt fine. You know, light, bright, happy energy space. You walk close to the sister's bedroom door, it gets denser and heavier and it feels uncomfortable. Like your body's pinging off, going, there's something here that shouldn't be here. There was what I could describe as a slight breeze and kind of whirling energy, a bit like a whirlpool, coming from the doorway area. Now, I looked inside the room. There were no windows open. And in the rest of the house, all the doors were closed and the aircon wasn't on. So after debunking all the possible options for this sort of gently moving, swirling breeze, I stepped into the room. Like, I didn't have to go far. It was literally about 50 centimetres in the door, one step, and there was this portal located smack bang in the middle of the bedroom doorway. Now, I've come across lots of different types of portals through my house clearing work. And there's positive portals. Out in nature, the elemental beings use them to come into our reality to help care for the earth. There'd be cosmic portals, which our cosmic extraterrestrial friends use to enter our reality and to leave again. But there are also detrimental portals, which upset the energetic balance in our homes, on the land, and also the people that have to sleep in or around this portal energy. So this portal was a single door vertical portal. Now, how I know that is that I stood in that space and I shut my eyes. And what I saw was one doorway. Sometimes when I look into portals, I'll see another door on the other side. And you'll be surprised at some of the tricks and the tactics they'll use to keep these doorways open. Booby traps, black magic, all sorts of things, just so that we can't close them. But I'm onto it. I'm pretty switched on when it comes to portals now. So this was just your basic single door vertical portal. Fascinating. I love standing in these spaces and just seeing what I can sense. Now, I felt really lightheaded, quite giddy, and I kind of lost my balance a little bit, which were some of the symptoms that one of the daughters described. Now, as I'm getting these sensations from the space, someone or something approached. Now, not from this reality, but on the other side of this energetic doorway. It was a really strange experience. Like, I'm standing there and this being is present. Like, I've got my eyes open. I can see this energy being. It's presenting itself through my third eye, if that makes sense, because that's our intuitive, universal vision area within our physical bodies and within our energy field. So I can have my eyes open and see the reality of the room that I'm in, but I can also, at the same time, see this energy being looking at me through this portal. Now, this being, this person, stood there and just looked at me. We just kind of observed each other. Kind of reminded me of a detective from back in the 1950s who used to wear the long dark coats and that kind of trilby fedora-style hat. And I did wonder in that moment if this was a human being somewhere else in the world using a portal doorway to remotely view the oldest daughter, who was very, very psychically open and learning to use her skills, learning to understand her skills. And as I pondered this question for a second or two, the doorway unexpectedly closed. Like, it simply vanished. And I was quite taken aback and I was a bit miffed. I was a bit annoyed. That was like, excuse me, I want to have a conversation with you. Obviously, this person, this energy being, did not want to talk with me. Maybe I'd seen too much. I don't think I'm sharing too much because the podcast is out and I'm able to share the information. If they didn't want it shared, then it simply wouldn't make it onto the directories. I'd have all sorts of editing and electrical issues. The files would get lost. Maybe I saw too much and the someone became uneasy, shutting the entrance to protect its identity. Now, the older sister didn't see the hatman again, but she never forgot about her interdimensional experience, and we quite often talk about it when I'm there for dinner. And in episode 18 of this podcast, my mate Dan from Dan the Paraman podcast, he shared an interesting experience about his nighttime face-to-face interaction with a tall, dark, cloaked figure with green glowing eyes that he'd experienced at his childhood home. And he said that the experience had stayed with him since childhood. When we talked about it, he could very vividly describe the energy being that he saw. He said it was extremely tall. It didn't chase him. It wasn't menacing in any way. But when he went into the house, he said when he looked out the windows, it would be looking straight at him. So why do these beings come to us? I'd really like some more information. I'm putting it out that if these energy beings are listening, we'd really all love to know some more about what we call the hatman. My second experience came to mind as I was writing my notes for this episode. What I share now came from many, many years ago, and I was just sitting in my lounge room one night watching TV, as we all do of a night time. I was just relaxing in my favourite chair, which was right next to our hallway, where the hallway door is, and the door is always open. Now, I'm watching my TV show, when in the peripheral vision of my right eye, a black shape appears. Now, this shape stands next to my chair. Now, I didn't panic because I'm like, paranormal addict here. Remember, I want to know, who is this black shape and what does it want? So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. I don't feel unwell, so I'm wondering, is it a dark energy being? I think not. Is it possibly a spirit? That's a possibility because I tend to see things slightly differently to other people that I've heard talk about seeing apparitions, like seeing full-bodied, white or translucent ghostly apparitions. Sometimes I see spirits as a dense patch of energy with a white glowing outline, which was similar to how this being presented itself. So as I was saying, this energetic presence just stood next to my chair. Didn't touch the chair, it just stood there. And I'm looking at the TV and I can still see it in my peripheral vision. And it kind of leaned in to have a closer look. And I think it was either being cheeky or it wanted my attention. So I turned and I faced this presence. We were eye to eye, if I could see its eyes. Now, it had this really black denseness about it, but there was a really thin white, kind of sparkly glowing outline. It was like mist sort of wafting off this being. Now, this entity moved like a child. Now, why I'm saying that is that as it came up to the chair, I kind of saw this swing of hair. If you've got children that have pigtails. As I turned to fully face the being and say, "I see you," it disappeared, just like the hatman. And I'm like, no, don't go. It just quickly turned and vanished off up the hallway. Now, I went and had a look. I got out of my chair and just very calmly walked around the bedrooms. I was the only one in the house at that time, no one else home. And I wasn't watching paranormal movies, so there wasn't any sort of confusion in my mind that I was actually seeing something out of the movie in my lounge room. Now, had this been someone remotely viewing me in this Earth reality? Very possibly. And why I say that is because I've spoken to other people who have had strikingly similar experiences with black figures, black shapes appearing in their homes with light, sparkly outlines. And as soon as you face them to confront them or to say, I see you, they just disappear. They don't disappear. That's probably a wrong choice of word. They don't vanish as you would expect a spirit to. They walk off. They run off. So that makes me wonder, is this someone remotely viewing me from this reality? I'm going to talk about that a little further on. There was an interesting book that I read that talked about remote viewing as a spying purpose. Now we're going to have a quick look at cloaked figures. I haven't had any defined experiences with cloaked figures, unless they kind of fall into the hatman range. I think they're just similar to the hatman in their intentions. They're just observers. Maybe, just popped into my mind, maybe they are extraterrestrial or cosmic visitors who are cloaking their shape so that they don't frighten us. Because quite often I wonder, are we being observed? Are we being given the choice individually or to have a mass consciousness rise of understanding? Are we being observed are we ready now, when we have these experiences, to level up in our energy? So there's not really a lot known about these cloaked figures. What I can say from my experiences or what clients have shared with me, like what Dan shared, his being that he saw could have been a hatman, could also have been a cloaked figure with the glowing eyes. They don't really interact with us. They don't chase us. They don't hurt us. They don't get in our minds and our bodies like the demonic beings do, who are after the energetic food source. This makes me think, because I always put my detective hat on, they're not after our food that we're creating for them, as in the energetic imprints, the emotional imprints, the vibrations. They seem to be watchers and observers, just simply gathering intel. I've had so many questions about these intriguing energetic visitors. And if you have a story or an opinion about the hatman, or you've experienced seeing a cloaked figure in your home, please email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. I would love to hear your thoughts and your experiences about these intriguing energetic visitors. Now, I have to say, I do often wonder, is there only one hatman, or are there many? Are these beings a race of interdimensional or cosmic beings from another reality that generally keep to themselves and keep their intentions hidden from us? Do they want us for one of their own purposes? Or are they here to assist us in some way, but they're not quite ready to step forward with, hi, how are you? We're here to help you with this. The humankind, I don't think, are ready for that type of cosmic interaction yet. It would frighten too many people. People aren't ready for it. So, do these beings open portals or interdimensional doorways to observe us? Or do they use them to travel around the universe and sometimes simply step into our reality? I'm going to do an episode on portals and wormholes and interdimensional doorways soon, which will talk about how these beings use these interdimensional highways, these super highways as I call them, as just simply ways to travel around the universe. And sometimes I'm sure they get tears or breaks in these highways, or they just become corrupted, and sometimes these energy beings may not mean to end up in the Earth reality, but they just do. So like I mentioned before, do some of these beings sense psychic potential in some of us and come to observe and study potentially useful connection points, as I call them, This means people who are attuned to higher vibrations and sense unseen energy beings. We may be useful to them for future interdimensional communication. Now, as I mentioned earlier, are they interdimensional visitors or simply human beings using remote viewing to spy on others in this reality? So in the last 10 years, I've kind of let go of a lot of my paranormal books and passed them on to people that I thought would appreciate them. And there was a book, which I wish I had have kept now, that talked about world powers and how they used psychic institutes during the two major world wars to conduct experiments in remote viewing, using it as a wartime spying tactic. Now, if I could only remember the name of the book, if I do find it, I will do a post-edit to this podcast episode and add some more information here. But all I can say is that this is an absolute possibility because I had a friend in India. He and I used to talk through online chats and he was interested in remote viewing. Now, he didn't give me his address. I had no phone numbers. I had no idea what this man looked like, or all I knew was that he was from India. So he and I decided to take a sticky beak look at the inside of each other's house. Now, when you do remote viewing, you're not going to get a walk around the house and see everything. You're going to see some pretty unusual things, or you're going to remote view in some rather unusual places, as you'll hear me describe. So he went first, and what he wrote down, he had no idea where I lived, like I mentioned earlier. There was no photos shared, nothing. We simply had each other's name and the intention and the permission. We had each other's permission, which is really important, to look into someone's private property. What he came up with was a very distinct view of a portion of the outside of my home, but also my lounge room. He saw the cushions in my lounge room. He described the colour, the shape of them, how many on the couch. He kind of described the shape of my coffee table, and at the time we were talking, there was a plate with 2 biscuits on it and a cup of tea. He also described a big circle out in the front of my house. And I went, oh, that makes total sense, because I had dug a circular area as a garden in my front yard. Now you're going to laugh. When I tuned into his property, I found myself at the back of his entertainment unit. Now don't laugh, like seriously, it was so funny. I'm looking in this space and I can see all these wires and all these cables. And when I looked down, I saw a power board and I went, oh, I'm in some part of his house where he's got a TV plugged in, probably a DVD player, all that sort of thing. So what I did is I came out of the sort of trance state that I was in and I asked to be shown more clearly one room within his house. Please show me some of the decorations within his bedroom so that I can describe them back to him. That was a more specific request. And what I got was I saw the red poster above his bed. Now, I didn't see it fully, didn't see the full poster. I couldn't tell you the name of the band that was on it. All I could describe was that it was extremely red, very large. I saw his bedroom was rather messy and that he had plates and forks and knives and spoons and all sorts of things hidden under his bed, which he was a little bit embarrassed about. But I didn't judge him. I just went, you know what, this is just what I'm seeing. And at that stage, when I did this remote viewing, because this was in probably only my first 5 years of doing energy work. I was quite young, and that was all I saw. I was so astounded to see this big red poster and to saw the top of his bed, and then I looked straight through his bed and I was seeing the forks and knives and dirty plates under his bed. I kind of got a little bit of a shock and it snapped me out of it. So there's a little example of how remote viewing can work, is that with permission and intention, You can look into other places. And when you have people who are very psychically tuned in, connected, they can be specifically asked to target a person or a location. Now, our third category, which we're going to look at today, is what we call the ominous presence that we sometimes feel in our homes or in our bedrooms, usually sort of leaning over us in bed. Now, these beings I would put in the dark energy category. They're either dark or demonic level beings that have come to you because there's a particular energetic vibration next to the bed, on the bed, or something that you've created recently and you're just pumping out that vibe that they want to feed off. Now, dark energy beings, they can observe us, but they are a little bit more mischievous and they can sometimes play games like hiding behind doors, lurking in dark corners, and the all too familiar hiding in the wardrobe, because they know that these sorts of actions will trigger us to create their much desired emotional imprints as their food source. Now, demonic beings are a level up from dark energy, as you would imagine, and they carry quite a defined level of power. They really have a dense, heavy, energetic presence. And sometimes people who are energetically sensitive or very just tuned into their intuition, they'll sense there's something in their house. They'll wake up from a dream and they'll feel like there's someone leaning over them in bed. They may not be able to see into the darkness and their mind just tricks them into thinking that there's a looming presence, where it might be a demonic level energy being just there, but generally they don't have a physical solid shape. They're just pure energy. Now, some of them do intend to strike fear into you because you're going to create more food for them. Some of them are just there because of what's already in the home, because of what's been left behind by the previous tenants. So never fear these beings. And never be rude to them either, because they dislike being disrespected. And that's when they can get a little bit nasty. So you just observe, you look at ways to clear this being out of your home. You see sort of a house healer, an energy clearer, someone like myself, and see if we can clear that ominous presence away from your bed space. So in episode 28, we're going to be looking in depth at portals, wormholes, and interdimensional doorways. From what I've learnt through my personal paranormal house and property clearing work, and I'm going to be sharing some of my personal and client-based experiences with these sometimes tricky doorways into other realities and what you can do about them. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. Email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.